So today we're going to be looking at freeCodeCamp.com and doing the intermediate algorithm scripting challenges with you. So let me start off by sharing my screen here, and we will take a look at the challenge itself. This challenge is the first one. It's sum all numbers in a range. Well, essentially what we want to do is we want to take the two arguments given and add them together and add together every number that's between them. So for 1 and 4, they want us to add together 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and you get 10. Now, if we look down what they're going to be giving us, they're also going to be giving us 4 and 1. Now, those numbers are the same, so we should be doing the same thing. All right, so how are we going to solve this? Well, what I wanted to do, I wanted to use a for loop. All right, and in that for loop, I wanted to start by pushing all of the values between those numbers into an array. So I want to use a for loop. All right, and then I want to push the values between 1 and 4 into a new array. And I want to add all of those values. Right? So I want to use a for loop to iterate between the numbers of these array. Then I want to push all of those values into that new array. And then I want to add all of those values together. All right. So there's going to be an issue here. The biggest issue that we're going to have is going to be that they're not necessarily always going to give us the smallest number first. So we have to determine what the largest and what the smallest number is. So before I can do any of this, it's telling me to use math.min and math.max, okay, which I have open here already. So let's take a look at math.min and math.max. And if you notice, they look almost the same exact thing, except math.min returns the smallest, all right, and math.max returns the largest. So let's go ahead in here. Before we get started, let's set two variables, all right, one being the minimum, one being the maximum. All right, so let's take the minimum and use that to math min. Notice that math is capitalized here. And I have two arguments coming in as an array. The first and second position, remember it's a zero-based counting system here. So the first number in an array is actually going to be in the 0th position. So ARR 0, and that's going to give us the thing right here, this first value, and ARR 1, and that's going to give us the second value here. And let's see what this is. And let's see if this works. So I can just return, again, returning out of my main function, and min, and see what we get. And if this works correctly, we should get a 1. And we get a 1. Good to go. So similarly, I want a new variable. I'll call it max. And just math.max. And same, there's two variables. So ARR 0, ARR 1, and my sentence here. And let's see what I get when I return max. 4. All right. So I use math.min and math.max to determine what are the smallest and the largest values, which is going to be important for our for loop here. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to use a for loop to push all of these values into an array. So what I need is I need a new variable. Right, and I'll just call it range. And this is going to be my range of values. I'm going to start off by setting that equal to the array. Right. So now I can work on my for loop, which is what I'm going to for loop. We all know that a for loop generally looks like this: a var I equals 0, and then while I is less than length of an array, so range dot length I plus plus. So that is the standard way that we've been using range to iterate through an array. But right now we have an array here, okay, that's empty. So we can't iterate through an empty array, so this is not going to work. Also, we don't want to start at 0. We want to start at the smallest number and push it into a new array that we can add together. So I don't want to start at 0. I want to start at the minimum. And I don't want to go to the length of the array. I just want to keep pushing in values until I get to the largest number. So while it's less than or equal to our max. Okay. Similarly, we could do less than max plus 1. All right, because in this case, we want to iterate through starting at 1 and going to 4. If we set it to less than just max, we want to add 4 in there as well too. Okay, that's why we have to say less than or equal to, so that way it counts up to 4. And after we get our for loop set up, this is where we push into our new array. So we're going to say our range. All right, dot push. And we've used push before. All right, and all push is going to do is push that value into our empty range. So it starts off as the minimum, in this case, which is 1, pushes that into range. So range now has one value, it's 1. I plus plus, now I is 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 4? Yes, it is. Push that in. So now our range has 1, 2. I plus plus, now I is 3. Is 3 less than or equal to max, which is 4? Yes, it is. Push it in. So now our range is 1, 2, 3. I plus plus, I is 4. Is 4 less than or equal to 4? Yes, it is. Push into our range. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 is our range. I plus plus, now I is 5. Is 5 less than or equal to 4? No, it is not. So we exit our for loop. And we can test this again. All right, we can test this by just returning range. And if we test this, we should get an array with 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. However, we don't want to return all of these values. We want to return those values that are after we add them all up. And we're going to be using reduce. And reduce we've used before. And here's the format. We take an anonymous function with 2 parameters, a and b, and all we have to tell that anonymous function to do is return a plus b, and it will add all those values of an array. Now note that this return here returns out of the anonymous function, and yet the return that we want here is going to return out of our function sum all. Okay, so we're just going to take this array here and then reduce it and take in our anonymous function. Okay, so here's our reduce. That's going to have a function. And now we have to do something. And notice we have our syntax here. It is a curly brace to close this anonymous function. It has this parenthesis to close out of this reduce, and it has a semicolon to end the sentence. And return. Out of the anonymous function, and this return gives us the return of our sum all function, which is the answer that we want. So all we did now is instead of returning that 1, 2, 3, 4, I called a into just 10. Aha, there is no spoon. Success. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Again, we went over math.min, which took the minimum value, math.max, which took the maximum value. We've identified an anonymous array, and we used a for loop in a slightly different way this time to push values from the smallest to largest into that array, and then use the reduce method as we've done previously. So hopefully this is helpful, and I will see you next time.